Racism and homophobia, they're taken seriously as hate crimes. But sexism is often dismissed as banter or harmless. Well, now Nottinghamshire Police has become the first force in the country to record harassment of women as a hate crime. The policy was officially launched in May and now could be taken up by other police forces, including Devon, Cornwall, Lincolnshire and Durham. In the first month, the force received 21 reports of misogynistic hate crime, which included verbal abuse, threats of violence, assault and unwanted physical contact. We're asking what the difference is between an admiring glance and an intimidating stare, and is it the kind of behaviour that can be policed? Tommy took to the streets in the Midlands to see how people there feel about the topic.
I'm here in Nottingham, where sexual harassment is now recorded as a hate crime. It's equal to that of racism and homophobia. But what I want to know is, do the people around here think that the likes of wolf whistling is just the banter of merry men, or should we be taking this kind of sexism a little more seriously? Have you ever been wolf whistled at or jeered at by some guys?
I have, yeah, actually, quite a lot when you're like walking to work in the mornings and it just seems a bit inappropriate.
Yes, I find it very creepy.
I'd rather someone like come up to me and talk to me about it and just be like, hi, I think you're good looking or whatever, rather than wolf whistling.
If someone wolf whistles at you, it just gives you a compliment. It gives you a boost. It's not sexual, it's not a hate crime, it's a boost.
Where does the line lie? Where does it become a bit of banter and women should take it as a compliment to actually that's a step too far?
Give you the classic example, walking past a load of builders. If they hear a wolf whistle and that's the end of it, I would say leave it at that. If there's more, then you're crossing the line.
I think sometimes they're just showing off and they're harmless, but if they actually come up to you and they start intimidating you and they don't leave you alone, then that's pretty bad.
What about a grope of the bottom or
That's
something?
different. Touching's different. You shouldn't be touched unless you specifically say you can be touched.
Should schools be doing more to educate guys in particular about harassment and how to talk to women and sexism?
Yeah, definitely. I think the earlier you start, the better.
It's all going to come down to parents and how people are raised, you know, as to what's acceptable and what's not.
Has the police gone too far? Has the law gone too far?
Yeah, I mean, probably in my eyes, I think they probably have gone a bit far. At the end of the day, it's just a bit of fun.
I think the police should get involved because it's, like I say, in this day and age, everything's changed to what it was in my day, yesteryear, so to speak.
How are they going to police that?
Well, so guys can be arrested for...
Someone wolf whistled at you, so you're going to get arrested. It's ridiculous.
Probably not criminal, but it's obviously I've had issues when I've been wolf whistled at and been ignored, and then I've been further approached and they come up to me, and when you say no and they don't stop, that's when I think it becomes an issue.
More important things that matter, I believe. But if it's intense sexual harassment, then yes, but if it's just petty little whistles, things like that, I think that's not as important as serious crimes that are going on at the moment.
Now, we're joined by radio presenter for TalkToMeRadio.com, John Gaunt, morning, and journalist and feminist Sarah Dighton, morning. Also, down the line from our Nottingham studios, one of the women who was at the forefront of the campaign for classification of sexism as a hate crime there, Nottingham Women's Centre manager Melanie Jeffs. Thank you very much for joining us, Melanie. Let's start with you, John. So how would you define a hate crime?
Well, that's a really difficult question, isn't it? Because the way it's defined by law, as I understand it, is if the person who believes it's a hate crime, believes who's been attacked. I think there's just too much emphasis on this. I think the police have many more important things to worry about. Clearly, we have laws already for racism. We have laws for assault, and those laws are in place. I think this over-obsession with political correctness is just absolute nonsense because, as I just say, I can't define it. This lady that you've got, or the woman, should I say, who you've got, maybe she can define it, maybe you can define it, but I think we'll all have different definitions, and I think that's one of the problems when we get into this area. And I think, actually, if anything, it causes more trouble. And I would hazard a guess that Nottinghamshire Police have got a lot more important things to do. OK, Sarah, your reaction?
I am astonished to hear that hate crimes are so hard to define when we've been monitoring them and surveying them for other issues for years and years now. For some reason, out of all of the identities that are systematically victimised, women have been left out. So we've monitored for race, we've monitored for religion, we've monitored for sexuality, we've monitored for transsexuality. But if you're a woman and you're attacked because you're a woman, there hasn't been any system for registering that up until now. exactly as it is defined, which you would know if you read the literature around.
Well, enlighten me. Why are you trying to put me down like that? Enlighten me. I would love to know.
John, I'm going to enlighten you with Melanie down the line from Nottingham, because she's been involved in this. She's been working in conjunction with the police to have sexism classified as a hate crime. So, Melanie, what is the main point of this?
Well, in terms of how it's defined, this is about behaviour that a man perpetrates towards a woman just because of her gender. And it is, as we've already heard, it is very much victim-led, so it is dependent on what the victim believes to be offensive and threatening to her or not. I think what's really important to note is in terms of the crimes and offences that have come through to the police so far, we haven't had one instance of wolf whistling. What we've had is very serious sexual assaults, we've had harassment, we've had public order offences, and what this has done is given women the confidence to come forward and report things that are already crimes, but previously they felt that are just things that they have to put up with and deal with just because they're women.
So, John, I mean, not frivolous.
No. But you booked me today to talk about should wolf whistling be a hate crime, to which my answer is no. Not many people do it anymore. It's abhorrent. I spoke to my mates about it. They all said, well, what kind of winker would do that, yeah? So the definition the woman just gave there, I haven't got a problem with that at all. That's just a more eloquent way than I expressed it earlier. I have 2 daughters myself. But if we are going to start talking about hate crimes, then are we going to look at things like the Muslim religion in this country, where women are treated as second-class citizens, where women go around in burqas or hijabs? Are we also going to start looking at where women are treated as second-class citizens by that religion? They're the real hate crimes. Let's get real and talk about that. If a woman has been sexually assaulted, if it was my daughter, I want the full weight of the law to come down. My daughter is at Oxford University. She tells me there about the rape culture at Oxford University amongst the absolute elite, about where these testosterone young men think that a woman, get her drunk, then you can screw her, right? Then you can rape her. That's what they think. That's what we should be concentrating on. That's the real problem. I was booked because you were telling me it was about wolf whistling and a bit of sexist banter, all of which I don't like. It's all unpleasant, and I'm sure it's really unpleasant for a woman to hear, and we should stop it.
And we're talking about also the level of political correctness as well. Jay, I mean, and this is what we're talking about. How far do we go in our complaints or our sensitivities? Indeed. We're not talking about whether or not it's acceptable for a woman to be treated as a second-class citizen or raped or in an environment that your daughter is
Or the Labour Party, for example, having segregated political meetings for the Muslim community in Birmingham, which they did at the last election. I find that abhorrent, I find that sexist, and I find that illegal, and that should be stopped.
So this is talking about levels of political correctness.
Indeed. You see, the thing is, we have to be very careful, because it may disturb the social fabric itself when you kind of put it into law. At the same time, we must protect the women, because they have, over thousands of years, suffered tremendous abuse. So it is necessary for us to put some protective measure in place, and I agree with that. At the same time, there may be a better way of doing this rather than policing it, because it's a very subjective element. The way of doing, way to do this, according to me, would be to empower the women to stand up for their own rights and their position. So that's what we are teaching. And if you allow that to happen, then, you see, the pendulum is swinging the other way. In fact, I must lighten up a little bit. We may think the women are always on the downtrodden and kind of, but if you really do a survey in this country and see who is running the, ruling the roost in the home, an average home in England, you'll certainly find it's the women. And the reason is very simple. I'm just like, I'm likely...
That is simply not the same thing as having political power, and that is not some recompense for the fact that 2 of us are murdered every week by a man we know. That is a very fascinating...
Let Jay finish.
Let me finish.
It's amazing to have women leaders when it shouldn't be remarked on upon at all.
You see, the easiest way is, as I said, empower the women to stand up for their stand their ground. That's the best way of really reacting.
Christina, there's also the issue of men experiencing sexism. Should they be protected or afforded the same protections?
I think what we have to recognise is that it can be really unpleasant to be a woman, let's say, standing on a very busy tube and somebody presses against you and you just think, OMG, what do I do? Of course. And it can be very unpleasant to be a man who is, because he's a man, gets, a kind of slap on the bottom by a woman,
or by a group of hen parties,
exactly,
for example.
Exactly. All of that can be unpleasant. Unpleasant, but should it be categorized as a crime? I think we have to step back and say, I have a 13-year-old daughter. I want her to be able to take the tube on her own, and for her to be able to navigate that very difficult path that is being in a crowded tube with lots of men going into the city while she goes to her school, and feel that she knows how to react.
Absolutely.
And
but what we're talking about with monitoring misogyny as a hate crime is that if a woman is sexually assaulted on the tube, the police are then able to record it as a hate crime.
No, I'm just talking about somebody pressing against
but then
you.
But that's completely irrelevant to the Nottingham initiative, because it isn't about criminalising, you know, people being a bit smutty and sexist in public. It is about when a crime happens perpetrated by a man against a woman that is specifically because she's female, it is about registering the hate crime aspect of that.
You can register it as a hate crime, but what I think we have to be careful of is, you know, there is now a mood among especially young people to create safe spaces in universities, which means nothing happens. Nothing can happen that could possibly offend anybody. Let's not pretend to ourselves that streets can become like that.
Can I ask Melanie? I'd like to get Melanie's view on this. I mean, Melanie, we're talking about whether or not women are feeling also more confident to report these crimes. Is this part of this initiative?
Yeah, if I can pick up this point about women needing to be empowered and to deal with this themselves, I think it's really worrying when you start to put the emphasis on the woman and say that they need to deal with it. But having this in place, women have told me it makes them feel like they've got this in their back pocket and they can stand a little bit taller in the street because they know that if they need to use it, they can do. But, you know, if they can just stand up for themselves, they will do. But it's not always safe to do that. And in terms of the points made about wolf whistling, I think we have to remember that every single wolf whistle reminds a woman of her position as a piece of public property in the street for men to look at and to judge. So even if women aren't reporting wolf whistles, I think
you're mixing really serious crimes with something as light and frivolous as wolf whistle. And I think that by doing that, you are totally belittling your point. It's like Emily Thornberry getting on Sky News and not being able to answer who the French foreign minister was. And then she said to the newscaster, you're sexist. Now that is exactly the kind of thing we should be getting away from. And your initiative is not helping.
Allow Melanie to react, and then John, I want to hear from you.
But I was going to say, but we don't have these discussions, as Sarah rightly said earlier, when we're talking about racism or homophobia. But for some reason, women have always been taught, you just have to deal with this. This is going to be the backdrop of your lives from the moment that you're 9 or 10 years old until you get so old that you become invisible. So why is it so difficult for us to stand up for women and give women the confidence to walk through the streets without being commented on and judged by men?
John?
Well, number one, that's wrong. We do have those discussions, and I've been doing phone-in radio for 30 years. We do have those discussions, and things have got better for the groups that she just talked about, and rightly so. And as I say, I'm a father of 2 daughters. I want my daughters to be fair. We've also got a mayor here in London who's just banned any pictures on the tube of scantily dressed women. I don't know whether it's going to be the same for men as well, you know, the bikini body thing. It's just a nonsense. Look, we're not living in Saudi Arabia. We all objectify sometimes, not me, because the size of me, but we objectify other people and their figures. Women do it. Let's all remember, was it the Pepsi-Cola advert or the Levi advert? Yeah, I know there's a power thing going on here because men are traditionally, you know, the in charge. That is changing. It's changing in politics, and rightly so. And we should pick up on people when they say, oh, they've just got a UKIP leader is a woman. Oh, Nicola, what's her name, is a woman. It's irrelevant. It's great that we're getting women in those positions of power. I want a meritocracy. I want women to get on. But, you know, let's keep it in perspective. Exactly. You're not going to carry some great big injury because some idiot, some moron wolf whistles you. And as I say, most people now, men included, and I live in the real world with working class fellas, they tell me they would go mad if they saw another bloke do that because they think they're idiots.
OK, let's find out what our viewers are thinking as well. You've been sending us your texts and tweets. Tommy, I imagine lots of reactions.
It's gone crazy. Yeah, many agree that harassment is a crime and should not be tolerated, although people are saying it should go both ways and men and women should be equally treated. Sally says, enough is enough. Of course sexism is a hate crime. This should be illegal and defined as a hate crime in the eyes of the law. Elizabeth on our Facebook page has written that misogyny is defined as hatred of women. So yes, it should be a hate crime. Unbelievable that it's taken 2 millennia to realise this. Tess says, whenever anyone repeatedly harasses, harms or makes someone else feel unsafe or uncomfortable and won't stop, then they are committing a hate crime. Tess saying, oh no, that was Tess Stewart saying here, if women are so strong, capable, independent, empowered and equal, why are we forever legislating and instigating procedures that imply that women are weak, feeble, incapable of making decisions and in constant need of protection and help? And finally, Gavin says, women should be charged for harassing men then. It's a day of age. It's a day of age equality. Let's have equality in law and not legalise sexism. Is that what it is?
Well, Sarah, there was Stuart's comments particularly saying that we all kind of raised our eyebrows at.
To just imagine that there is any kind of equality in a society where, as a woman, you go on TV. I will certainly go on Twitter and have monstrous comments about the way I look in a way that you guys are not going to get. I will be, judged on my appearance, my presentation. Things will be found wanting about my voice because you're female. And to say somehow that there is not an issue with sexism in a society where every time a woman wants to enter public life, simply to the extent of leaving your house, you have to confront that bar.
Sarah, neither one of us said that this is not an issue.
This dismissal of wolf whistling as if sort of endemic low-level street harassment is not a problem. It is a problem.
I think what we're saying is, let's not try to legislate in order to create this kind of nirvana of a safe
But we're not
street.
legislating against that stuff. We are talking about making the connections between acts of violence that are misogynistically motivated, recording them, seeing the pattern, and being able to confront it.
Your definition of an act of violence is too wide-ranging.
I haven't defined wolf whistling as
well.
violence.
I'm afraid Nottingham did.
We have 30 seconds. I'm going to give you the final word.
I have tremendous faith in womankind, and they're coming back in force with vengeance, if I can say. So I'm a bit worried about the role of men in society in days to come.
OK. Well, we could have spoken a lot more, couldn't we? Always the case. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Melly, thank you very much as well.